Hi y'all. If you're a new ham and you're thinking about getting into some vintage radio, then this video just might be for you. And if you're an older ham and just love radios, you might enjoy the video also. On the bench is several of my favorite all-time radios. And we're going to look at each one and talk about them for a few minutes in this short tips video. So if you think this is for you, stick around. So if you recently gotten your ham license and you've upgraded to general or extra, you'll be wanting to get on HF, and you might run out to your local ham fest or eBay deal or whatever and pick you up a Kenwood TS 520. Now, a lot of novices back in the day, in the 70s, cut their teeth on this particular rig. This was a very, very popular radio back in the 70s and 80s. It's basic. It has a few features in it, like crystal calibrator, noise blanker, Vox, and so forth. It is strictly 10 through 80 meter. There is no 160 meters on this radio. There's none of the warp bands. It's no general coverage receiver. So, like I said, these were great rigs and they were good CW performers. Now, I encourage anybody that's in the ham radio is not just be an operator, but learn how to do their own service to these rigs. Because when you buy stuff like this, it's going to have to be worked on from time to time. The radio's pretty heavy. It's going to cost you quite a bit to ship it out and have it repaired, and 6 months later something else goes wrong with it. There's plenty of information out on the web. Now, back when I was coming up, there was no web, no internet to go to. We had to read and study out of books to figure out how to repair this stuff. And it's not that hard to do, especially if you go out and search and find known problems. That's, goes through these rigs. But I encourage everyone to learn how to work on their radios. It saves you a lot of time and money in the long run. Now, sometime now here in the future, I'm planning on putting together a list of known problems on vintage radios. There's a big list on the TS 520. But if you go out and buy one of these and it works, you're in good shape. Now, it uses 6146s as the finals. These are a hybrid radio. It's fully solid state, all but the transmitter. There's 3 tubes. You have a driver and 2 output tubes. So you get that quality audio from a tube transmitter, but you get the reliability of a solid state rig. Now, there's several known issues with these radios, especially if they've been sitting up for a while. And you get your basic bad capacitors that's dried out, gone away, and has to be replaced. One of the biggest known issues is wobble in the VFO, and I've covered this on several other videos a few years ago. But a lot of times the grease inside this VFO is old and it's dried up, and it'll also cause the VFO not to function correctly. It'll sound like it's hard to tune a station. It's kind of like it's like they wobble back and forth. But the issue is the grease is so hard and dried up that if you sit here and you go to fine tune, that VFO will actually move just slightly, and it'll cause that frequency to shift. Now, there's also a capacitor that is fed on this VFO that goes bad. If you look through the schematic, you can find it. and voltage. The voltage needs to be rock solid on these VFOs to keep them from drifting around. Another thing that happens on the VFO is the rotor loses conductivity to the chassis. Now let me show you on another VFO what I'm talking about. Now this is the VFO 520. It's a standalone VFO made for the Kenwood radios, and I've removed the inspection plate off the side of the VFO. Now this is the exact same VFO that you'll find inside your TS 520. So let's take a peek down inside the VFO at the tuning capacitor that's in here. So as we look inside this VFO, you can see the rotor shaft goes there, and on this end is a spring clip. Now you see this is touching the metal chassis and the rotator that goes through the VFO. And you can see I'm rotating the rotor in the VFO. Now what happens is that this shaft gets a lot of dirt and old grease built up in it, and it becomes non-conductive. When it becomes non-conductive, it changes the capacitance. So if you take off that inspection plate, take a Q-tip, put some good cleaner, some deoxit, 99% alcohol or something, and clean this and let it drip down in there, and run this back and forth, and take that Q-tip and clean this, and try to clean around the edges of it if there's any corrosion, and get this cleaned out, and it'll stop that VFO wobble 99% of the time. But again, they're great radios. You just can't beat them. They're easy to work on. Buy one of these, recap it, clean all the controls, clean that VFO shaft, and you'll have a good radio. Again, the cons are, you know, you're completely restricted to the 10 through 80 meter amateur bands. There is no general coverage in any of these receivers. Radios, yes, they're fully solid state over the transmitter, but they are kind of at the beginning of the boat anchor stage. But again, once these radios are repaired and working, they're good radios. But they will need to have maintenance done from time to time. Now, unlike the next radio I'm going to show you, this is strictly CW single sideband. There's no AM, no FM. And that kind of limited the service that these radios got used in. Now I hear people say all the time, you know, be careful buying these old radios because they got pulled in by the 11 meter folks and modified and stuff. Well, these didn't have AM, so yes, some 11 meter operators did get these and use them on free band, on single sideband, but not as many as the next radio we're going to talk about. One good thing about these rigs is that they have a built-in power supply, so you don't have to run an external power supply with them. Again, these are great radios, and if you're going out and you're looking at HF rig, your first HF rig, and you got a little technical knowledge behind you, this may be a good choice for you. Next radio we're going to talk about is the Yaesu FT101. Now these were a love-hate relationship with the amateur community. Those that loved them wouldn't use nothing else but these. Those that hated them just stayed away from them. When it first came out in the early 70s, there was a lot of issues with the first one. This was relayed back to the Japanese manufacturer, and they did modifications and come out with the FT101B. and then they came out with the E, and every time we paired some mistakes that was communicated back to them, and they sold a lot of these rigs. Now, not only did these radios loved by the amateur community, if you look right there on the band switch, you can see some of them had the 11 meter band already in them. So a lot of the CB crowds got a hold of these rigs, so there's no telling when you go out and buy one of these what you're going to find. Now, some of the other models didn't have the 11 meter band switch, had auxiliary or 10 meters, and there was a lot of times you would find these with 11 meter crystals in them, and all kinds of mods, stuff ripped out of them that shouldn't have been done, but it was. Not saying that it's, can't be repaired or fixed. It's just that you might have to spend a little more time on trying to get these rigs up and running. Luckily, I have 6 of them. None of them has been modified or any crystals changing in it, so they're a little bit easier to work on. So, a few pros about these transceivers. Just about all the boards in here are modular and can be unplugged and worked on and then plugged back in. Now, I keep a whole set of the boards here in the shop when I'm working on these. I can easily try to nail down the problem. Like if we got low receive, I'll pull this board out and plug another one into it and see if that increases the receive. Then I know that this board has the problem, and I can go in and troubleshoot it. Now, one thing that does help is having a set of extender cords so that you can pull the board out, plug the extender cord in, and then plug the board into the extender cord. And that helps a lot of troubleshooting them. Now, as you can see, I have a set of extender cords. Now, these were homemade, and I was able to get a set of the chassis connectors and just etched out my own PC board and made these. And the boards just simply plug directly in the top, and then you plug it into the radio. This way you got access to the board. You can take measurements and check. Now, you can buy these. They'll run you about $100, or you can go on eBay and you can find these connectors. Now, you don't have to make a card for every board. You only have to have 4, and that'll cover all the boards. It's not going to be a time where you're going to have every board up out of the chassis to work on it. You only need to worry about one at a time, and these extender cords help a whole lot in working on these. Again, there's a ton of information on the internet on repairing these radios, and that will help you a whole lot. There's some good videos out there too that'll help, but they're easy to work on. It's not hard. You just need a good service manual, read it, learn it, understand it, and you can pick these boards up off of eBay, or you can find a junker and get the boards out of. That way you can test the boards and check them out. So, some of the cons about these relays. The original relays, and there's 2 different relays inside this unit. They are next to impossible to find. If you get an open coil or a contact that's blown off, they are just about next to impossible to find, not unless you find somebody that has some used ones. Now these relays, the other original one looks just like this, but it's a different. Now these relays will plug directly into your transceiver. The only thing is they are wired completely different. So you would have to rewire the relay or rewire the socket to make these work. The same thing with the large relay. And let me see if I can find the number on these. Alright, so here's the part numbers for each relay. That's the large one, Potter Broomfield, RTN-E1-76-V90, and the small relay is Omron MX2P-OE-UA. Now again, these will have to be rewired. This one you would definitely have to rewire the socket for it. If you take the little diagram on the side and match it up to the diagram in the radio, and it's pretty easy to figure out what has to be switched and changed to make these relays. But you can get these brand new, still available. I've just checked the other day, and you can still get those, and that will solve the relay problems if you can't fix your old relay. Now another downfall, as some would say, to the Yaesu FT101 is the final tubes. Unlike the TS520 that uses 6146 tubes, the Yaesu used a 6JE6 tube. Now as you can see, this is one of the original tubes that come in the Yaesus back when they were new. This is the American General Electric equivalent tube. It's a 6JS6C. Now people has reported problems switching from the Japanese tube to the American tube with neutralizing. There's a mod you can look at on the internet, because the only thing is the capacitance is a little different inside these tube. So you can change the capacitance and use the American tubes. Now most of these rigs that's out there, that capacitor has already been changed. But before you do anything, if you have the original 6JE6 Japanese tube and you put in a set of American tubes, try it first and see if it'll neutralize before you go doing that, because a lot of them that I have seen will neutralize and neutralize with no problem in doing that. Now let me say this. I know ham operators that has bought the 101 brand new, and to this day 2022 have the original tubes still installed and working fine. It's all a matter about tuning this radio and tuning it properly and keeping it maintenance and running it like you're supposed to, not running the carrier so high. If you do use it on AM, keep the carrier balance down to about 25 watts on this carrier balance. Do not try to run these tubes wide open. If you do, you're going to take the tube out. But like I said, I know ham operators that has these still have the original first set of tubes that it came with, and they're working fine. Now May of I think it was 1999, I believe, an article came out in QST about a new life for your Yaesu FT101, and it's converting from 6JS6 to 6146s. I've had several radios come across my bench that people have modified, and all of them come in here for low output power and noisy receiver. And what I found is that the conversion to the 6146s is what's causing those issues. I have never seen one that worked correctly. Now some of you out there may have, or may not have noticed no issues, but if you know what you're looking for, is that for some, you got to remember this radio was built around this 6J S6 tube. They didn't build a radio and decided to put these tubes in it. On the design bench, this tube was selected and they built around it this sweet tube. So think about that. That conversion's out there. If you want to do it, good luck with it. I haven't seen anything that great about it. All my, out of the 7 rigs that I have here, they all have the 6J S6s in them, and all the tubes are testing good. Now, you don't need to go with one Japanese tube, one American tube. You either need 2 Japanese tubes or 2 American tubes. If they within specs of each other, I've seen no problems running 2 tubes as long as they're matched electrically. They don't have to be matched physically, but matched electrically. So guys, that's my take on the 101. They are great radios. They're easy to work on. They're even easier than the 520s, especially with the plug-in modules. Let's say if you have some of these and you have buy your set a set of plug-in modules, and you can find them on eBay all the time, and the prices are not that bad on them, because people on eBay love to get a hold of these rigs and strip them, because they can make a lot of money on selling parts on these things. Yes, I hate to see radios end up that way, but you got to remember there was a lot of these made back in the day. I mean, a lot of them. So there's still a lot of good radios around. There's some dogs around. You just have to work through the issues. If it was modified heavily, it can be put back stock. It's just going to take a little more time, and it's a good learning experience. So 101 is a great rig to have if you're into working on rigs and keeping them going. Now, another one of my favorite nostalgic transceivers is the Drake TR4. These were some awesome sounding radios back in the day, and they still are. We'll tell you, these take a little more knowledge to keep going. This is fully tube. It's not a hybrid like the last two we just looked at, but they are fun radios to operate. These radios came out in the 70s. They are 10 through 80 meter single sideband CW AM. They are not that great on AM. Now you can go in and install an AM filter from MRAD and get it sounding better on the receiver, but still it needs a lot of modifications to really get it to sound good if you want to work AM on the ham bands. Now, like the Yaesu FT101, these use sweep tubes in the transmitter section, 6 JB6s. They're still pretty easy to find. I have quite a few of them. There is 3 instead of 2. Now the whole radio is tube. There is no, it's not just solid state. It's a full tube radio. In fact, I think the count is like 19 tubes in this thing. So there's a lot of tubes. And your biggest problems with these is going to be failed capacitors, failed resistors, dirty controls. You know, you got to remember this generates a lot of heat, so resistors and capacitors will go out in these. You know, that's just expected with the amount of heat and the voltages that's inside this radio. Now, again, I want to say, when you're working on these, you need to be careful because of those voltages. If you don't know what you're doing, you better sit back and think about it and learn before you pop the top off one of these and go in and start working on it. But other than that, you know, it's a good, no bells, no RIT on it, not a lot of bells and whistles at all on it. So it's 10 through 80 meter. It's got 3 bands of to cover the 10, 15, 20, 40, and 80 meters. Now, unlike the last 2 rigs we just looked at, this does not have a built-in power supply or a speaker. So you would have to go out and find the power supply for this rig. So one option would be the Drake AC-4, which is a standard power supply. It's not in a cabinet. You would set it behind your desk, plug it in, and get it to work. The next option would be the Drake MS4, which is a power supply in a cabinet with a built-in speaker. Now, as you can see, when I got my TR-4, I went ahead and built my own speaker, and inside the cabinet you will see the AC-4 power supply. So when I built this, I used the same dimensions as the MS4 power supply, and I just went ahead and put my own cabinet together since I had a metal brake. Now, my plans were to get the cabinet powder coated. That has not happened yet. The guy that was doing powder coating around here has quit, so I'm probably just going to end up sanding this down and painting it and leaving the chrome grille just like it is. But for good old quality audio and just a good fun radio to use and work on, the TR-4 from Drake is very nostalgic. It's a great old radio. Okay, so we done looked at Yaesu, Kenwood, Drake. Now we have to move to solid state because ICOM did not actually build a hybrid radio like the 101s and the 520s that I know of. Now, maybe there's something out there, but it's nothing I haven't not been able to find. But for what a HF radio can do, the ICOM IC745 has always been a good bang for the buck. Also the ICOM 735, which is a smaller unit than this. These radios sound great and they work great when they're working properly. This radio was listed as an all-mode rig from ICOM, although it's not an all-mode rig. It does have AM, but it's AM receive only. Now, I've done a video a year or two ago of converting the AM over to transmit, and it's not just going in snipping a wire. There's a lot of circuitry had to be added to get AM on this thing working correctly. But the good thing about these, you know, it's general coverage receiver, so it goes from 0 to 30 megahertz, just about covers the whole entire band. Fun radio, split operation, RIT, lots of bells and whistles, VFO A and B. It's just a great radio. Even has a built-in preamp. The problems is, again, no AM transmit out of the box. RAM board, battery fails, volatile memory. You'll lose your memory. Now you can go out, and there's 2 manufacturers that build a replacement RAM board that you can put in these that will get this radio back up and running. But if your battery goes dead in your RAM module, this thing is a brick. It does nothing. Another problem is that when ICOM built these radios, they use plastic trimmer capacitors for the 4 VCO oscillators in this thing. Over time, that plastic deteriorates, stretches, that trimmer becomes unstable, and this thing will start drifting off frequency, become very unstable, and give all kinds of problems. Now these are the original trimmers that came out of the VFO, and you can see they are plastic. The dark color one, brown color, is a 12 picofarad, and the blue one is a 6 picofarad. And like I say, them things are plastic. They caused a lot of issues when this thing starts deteriorating and your radio just becomes unstable. You can't tune nobody in. The VFO is just all over the place. So the good thing was ICOM did supply these two part numbers. This is a 12 picofarad and a 6 picofarad in a ceramic capacitor, and you could order these from ICOM. They was a little pricey, but it fixed the radio, so all was good. Now ICOM has discontinued these two parts. Now you got to remember, if a part is no need for a specific part, the manufacturers that make these things will stop production on them. Well, that has happened, and you are no longer able to find the 6 and 12 picofarad capacitors that ICOM used. I have not been able to find them in any brand whatsoever. So here on the right we have the original replacement for the 12 picofarad capacitor. The only thing I have been able to find is these, and you can see they are much bigger, and instead of being a two-legged capacitor, they are three-legged capacitors. They actually have two grounds on them, one on either side, and then the rotor. These will work. They're just a little harder to get in. You basically got to clip the leads off and solder two wires onto them like a lead off of a resistor, so you can bend them down to get those in there. Like I say, they will work. They're just a little more aggravating getting them into the circuit. With these would normally fit right in. You see the original ones are small, just like the plastic trimmer capacitor was. It's got the same footprint. The footprint on these are a lot larger because it's a larger capacitor. Okay, as you can see, I got lucky. I think you can say I got lucky. It cost a little bit of money, but I was able to pick up some original 6 and 12 picofarad capacitors. I have 5 of each. Now inside here is also some of the plastic capacitors, which are good, but I still be a little leery of putting them in a radio because we know they're going to fail. These are the exact same ones that was used in ICOM back when the radios first come out. But I ended up, and I hate to say this, but I will, I give 20 bucks a piece for these things because I just can't find them. So that's enough for 4 radios here, and I got 3 here that's in need of them, so that's going to give me a complete set. Now I picked these up just a week before last. Like I say, I hated to spend that much money on these little parts, but I don't know when I'll be able to get any more original ones. I'm hoping that those big ones I got will work and work okay, but it's a lot easier to put these in the radio and make them work. So we'll just have to play around and see after these are gone what I'll be able to come up with. So FT745 order 751, those are some of the problems that you'll be looking at. Another thing about this particular rig, it is DC only. There's no AC supply in it. Now they did make an AC supply that took the place of the bottom cover. I have never really liked them. They're very noisy. They're not quite strong enough to handle this radio. So you're probably better off to get you a good 35, 40 amp external power supply to run them off of. Other than that, I love these old radios. They work great when they're working, and it's just one of my favorite solid state radios. So anyway, there you go, guys. That's my take on some of my favorite radios, what I like about them, what I don't like about them, and you know, just general information. You're going out and buying any of these, you know, expect to work on these things. They are not going to work perfect all the time, and that's why if you get radios like this, you need to be a little bit tech savvy to keep them running, or you'll be boxing them up and shipping them to someone that can repair them. And I will say, finding people to repair stuff like this is getting harder and harder and harder. You know, I just don't have time to do it for other people other than keeping my own stuff, working a full-time job, you know. So if you got to box one of these things up and ship it to somebody, especially across the country, you know, you're looking at 100, 150 bucks to ship something, and that's crazy. And then you got to worry about it getting damaged. So this is why you should, you know, think about if you could get into this kind of hobby and messing with vintage stuff, be prepared to learn to start working on your stuff. And that's what I'm here to do, is help folks that want to work on this stuff and want to learn and keep this old stuff going. And that's why I enjoy doing YouTube videos. I just checked the last count. We up to 20,000 subscribers. Now it sounds like it took a long time to get from about 18,000 to 20,000. So at 25,000, I'm planning on doing something a little special for you guys. We'll just have to see how it goes, but I got something up in mind, and probably looking at getting rid of some, or giving away some new equipment. We'll just have to see. I'm working with some people now, and we'll see how that goes. Anyway, guys, I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave your comments down below, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye now. So guys, in the future we'll be going through just about everything you see here on the bench. This is another 520 I've had for a while that is in need of some repair because it's been sitting up for a long time. And I've had already started on the Drake, going through it. It's just got pushed aside, so we'll be going through that along with several more Yaesus and a few more IC 745s.